Los Angeles is in the house, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the Q&A showdown. My name is Richard. This show is about I touch different topics from life insurance, real estate, business, entrepreneurship, and much more, with guest appearances by professionals who share their knowledge and expertise. And like I said, LA is in the house today. And my guess is the girl who gets it done.
That's me.
So she is a professional podcaster. She has over 700 podcast episodes. She is the host of the Women in Tech podcast. She has been featured in the Podcast Magazine and also Inc. Magazine as one of the top 30 women in tech to follow. Plus, she is an entrepreneur. She has a company, I believe We Are LA Tech. And
Yep.
I believe she'll have to correct me on that. I believe she has a book maybe in the works.
Yeah, I do have a book in the works. I do.
So it's my pleasure to have her on my show. I'm very happy to have her, and I'm happy that she accepted my invitation. Her name is Espree Devora. So she's right from LA right now, and she's gonna tell a little bit about herself, who she is, and we'll take it from there. So it's all yours, Espree.
Hello, everybody. My name is Espree Devora, as Richard was saying, and I created We Are LA Tech, which is a company to plug people into the Los Angeles tech ecosystem. I've been a community builder throughout my entire career, having built the first action sports social network back in the day, which is exciting. So right when I started in technology, I started thinking about how can I utilize technology to create community. So my history is I built that social network, and then fast forward to 2012, I built We Are LA Tech. Fast forward to, I think it was about 2015, I launched the Women in Tech podcast. And right around 2014, 2015 is when podcasting started to get popular. So I was just in the right place at the right time, already building community, already producing a lot of events. And then podcasting became my medium to continue cultivating community. And so that's the fast track of my life.
And why? Tell us a little bit about Women in Tech, the Women in Tech podcast. I've listened to it, and it's very good.
Oh, thanks.
Tell us a little bit about the Women in Tech podcast. Why did you start it, and how long it's been on the air?
Sure. So I launched the first episode in 2015. I started producing it before that. And I launched the Women in Tech podcast because so I'd already built my action sports social network. I'd already raised money, and I found these groups for women in tech that started to be put together. And in all the group settings, the conversation would always be how women are held back or how women can't do this and can't do that. And I thought, wow, if I had heard all of this before, maybe I wouldn't have believed that I could raise money, that I could build this action sports social network. And so I wanted to create a positive piece of content, sharing stories that would empower listeners to say, hey, if she can do it, so can I. So on the podcast, we share different mentorships that's been accessed, different resources, different lessons learned, different strategies that the women have overcome and executed on in order to get to where they are today. And I just believe that as long as listeners can see examples of what's possible, then they can do that too. And so, that's the story behind Women in Tech. And we come out with, on average, 3 new episodes a week. Right now, I'm on a little break. We're doing 2 a week. I think some people would consider that not a break either. And I've been to over 100 countries celebrating women in tech.
Wow, 100 countries.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, wow. You've mentioned, I think you did sports before. Do you still have the company, or That was
No,
it.
that was part of my past. But it's everything that created who I am today. So I'm really proud of what I had built. But no, it's part of the past, not here anymore.
Okay.
I
And
don't think I'd want to own a social network now. Social networks are like, sometimes they have some bad juju.
uh, how long you've been an entrepreneur?
I feel like I was born an entrepreneur. People ask me all the time, like, did I choose being an entrepreneur, or when did I choose being an entrepreneur? And the fact is, like, I just remember since I was a little girl wanting to build businesses. I would see empty office buildings and ask and just daydream with my father, like what businesses I would put in them. So I don't remember ever not wanting to be an entrepreneur. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial household, so it was a very natural pathway for me.
Can you tell us a little bit about We Are LA Tech?
Yeah. So, in building my sports company, I did it on my own. I had a co-founder, but I mean, it was really me figuring everything out on my own. And I realized later that unfortunately, sometimes people on stage really just want clients, or they just want like a deal. They don't really care about, at least they didn't care about my success. So here I am, this completely driven entrepreneur, excited to gather and learn all this information from the experts or the consultants, and discovering that really they just wanted a piece of my investment money or something like that. It was heartbreaking. So I wanted to create a community that we could safely lean on one another, celebrate one another's wins, be there for one another if we're having a fall. There's different conversations that happen, like how to retain employee retention, what to do when there's an acquisition deal. There's all these kinds of vulnerable conversations that need to happen, but a lot of times we don't have a safe place to have those conversations. So I wanted to create a safe, connective environment for us to have that support group as we work in and build our companies.
Okay, I was doing some research
Yeah.
when about We Are LA Tech. Do you guys do you guys produce content for digital content for other companies or?
No, so we just have the podcast, and we've produced over 400 events, from horseback riding, clay pigeon shooting, race cars, dinners. And I like to keep the event small, 8 to 15 people, to really simulate that dinner party like vibe. And yeah, and it's been like an incredible experience. People have gotten married, they've raised money, they've met their co-founders. It's really extraordinary what you could do when you match the right people together.
What are the challenges that you face as an entrepreneur? You must have faced some challenges.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny. I interviewed someone earlier today, and she said every day is a challenge. And I totally agree with her. Like, every day is a challenge, like managing our time, overcoming deals that, like, we don't know how to communicate in the deal. So for example, let's say somebody wants to like sponsor something that I do, or maybe an acquisition offer, and you don't know how to negotiate it, or you don't know like what terms are the best terms. And there's just constantly prioritize knowing when to prioritize your self-care versus like investing into your company, um, knowing where to get funding from, knowing when to take funding from others, knowing when to grow on your own, business models, pricing. I mean, the list goes, employee rapport, like the list goes on and on and on and on. There's always something coming up. So it's really about wanting to be on this ride, because the ride is not easy. And a lot of times, like, I'll ask my guests, like, why do it if it's not easy? Because I know the reason why I do it, even though it's not easy, it's my identity. It's who I am. It's how I show up in the world. It's what I think about. So it just, like, this is me. But I'm always curious to ask them, like, why do you do it? Like, when it's so difficult. And, there's so many answers, from wanting to live a purposeful life to a mission driven life to having control over what you do to being having a certain capacity of finance that you could gain if you stay within a job. There's only so much wealth that you could build, but if you're entrepreneurial, you could exceed that. So there's tons of different reasons that people go about it, but for me it's my identity, and it's very challenging. Very, very, very challenging, and also very creative and very exciting.
Do you have other business ventures besides We Are LA Tech?
Yeah, I feel like, so yes and no. So technically I have a production company focused on tech, lifestyle, and culture that produces content and that produces events. And then I have different brands under that company. So I have like the Espree Devora brand, I have the We Are LA Tech brand, I have the Women in Tech brand. Yesterday I created the NFT brand. So there's different brands underneath that content, underneath that umbrella. But at the top level of it, I have one company that's a production company, and we've built technology to unify a community, content to unify a community, in-person events to unify a community, matchmaking to unify. I mean, just everything is a unification of community. Yeah.
What advice would you have for someone who wants to become an entrepreneur, whether they're male or female?
It's like, is this something you deeply and genuinely totally want? Do you want the lifestyle of being an entrepreneur? I think the biggest like power we have as entrepreneurs is to understand our intuition is our oracle, really trusting ourselves, because one thing in being an entrepreneur is you'll get a lot of advice from a lot of different people, and it will be conflicting advice, and you won't know which one is the right advice. But there is no such thing as the right advice, or oftentimes there's not, at least, because the right is the right thing for you. So I spoke with someone like an hour ago that was talking about like a really famous business person said, but I don't want to be like that person because that person really sacrifices free time too much to me. So it's about understanding like what is important to you and how do you want to architect your life, and building your business around how you want to architect your life. Don't let your business control you. You be the artist behind your business. Remember, you got into this for a reason. So if you're not enjoying your life day to day, like take a step back and shift it around, because there's only one reason we start a company typically, and it's because we had a pure desire and need and joy to want to start that company. So as we get into the trenches, always take a step back and make sure that it's still on course, the reason why you started it.
I like that. That's some good advice. So like I said, you're a professional podcaster. You've been doing that for a while. What advice would you have for someone who wants to have a successful podcast?
I think the very first thing in having a successful podcast is probably the most boring answer, but it's really understanding your purpose behind your show. I think a lot of new podcasters make the mistake of not knowing what their goals are, not knowing why they're getting into it. And so they do 7 or 8 episodes and they experience what's called pod fade, which is where you just quit podcasting because you're like, it's not working. But the problem isn't that the podcast isn't working. The problem is that you don't know what working is, and you didn't have that intent from the start. So for example, the NFT podcast that I'm about to start, the whole reason why I have that podcast is to share what I learn as I myself am discovering NFTs. My desire in creating the podcast is because I find NFTs really boring. And I think it's really important to know about NFTs. And so I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this in a way where I'll find it interesting? I'm like, I know. I'll like have a podcast where it's kind of, I become a researcher about NFTs, and it's really just for me to learn for myself. So what success looks like for me with that show is, did I learn about NFTs? Like I don't care how large my audience is. I will share it as much as like wherever I need to share it in order to help people who also want to know about NFTs. But like, if it has 1 million listeners or 10 listeners, that's not success for that particular show, right? So understanding what's the purpose of the show and like what does success look like related to that show, rather than getting into podcasting just thinking, okay, I'm going to be Joe Rogan. Like, first of all, I'm pretty sure Joe Rogan got into podcasting just because he liked talking to his friends. And it just happened that he got lucky and his podcast is super big. But really figure out the core of like why you're creating this thing in the first place, and then that's what's going to keep fueling you.
You mentioned NFTs. It's getting bigger and bigger.
It is. I feel like I'm already late.
um, two things. When are you gonna start the podcast on the NFTs, and how knowledgeable you are of NFTs at the moment?
Yeah, I barely know anything. I seem to know vocabulary. I don't know what the vocabulary means, but I know words like cyberpunk and metaverse, and but I don't know what any of them mean. And POAP, pop, and token and ETF. Like, so I'm accumulating this dictionary of words that I don't know the definition to. And I already recorded the first episode today. And essentially in the first episode, it talks about like Art Basel is allegedly like a great place to go, which is happening at the end of the year in December in Miami, if you want to be fully immersed in the NFT world. And allegedly, it's supposed to be how South by Southwest was back in the day. And I was at South by Southwest, which is a huge conference in the technology space in Austin, Texas. And it's totally different now than it was. It's kind of like Burning Man. Do you know Burning Man?
No.
Oh, Burning Man is this huge festival, super famous festival. And if you got to go years ago, it was probably amazing. But now it's past its prime. It's like now it's like a thing, it's a trend, right? So I feel like what I heard is Art Basel will kind of have that same new excitable energy, not so corporate, that happened at South by Southwest back in the day. And I miss that kind of like exciting, buzzy, new tech kind of vibe. So we had that with social networks in the beginning. When I got on Twitter, I had to force my staff to use Twitter. Like they're like, "What is this stupid thing?" You know, like just use it. And that's kind of what NFTs are. Nobody understands it, including me. We don't know how to work it, but it's there and it's getting louder. And people on the radar are like, "What is this NFT thing?" Just like the way they used to talk about Twitter, you know?
Yeah. Um, Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot,
Sure.
Espree, for your time.
Of course.
Where can people find you on social media? I'll put some information at the end of the recording on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or
Sure.
website. Where can people find you?
Sure. I'm at Espree Devora on all social. So that's ESPREEDEV, like Victor, ORA, on Instagram, on Twitter. Or you could email me, Espree at hey.com. So that's my first name at HEY.com.
Okay. Thank you very much for
Thank you. This is
for
fun.
for showing up and accepting my invitation. Like
Of
I said,
course.
it was pretty risky. I wasn't sure if you were gonna accept, and I really appreciate the time that
You got it.
that you allow me, and I hope I'll see you again. And so this was the end of the Q&A showdown with Espree Devora and myself, Richard. I hope everybody enjoyed it and found some value in it. And on that note, we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Q&A showdown. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Espree, for your time.
Bye.